What annoys you most when you go out to the movie theaters? Why? I'm on the tall side of the height range. I got to a movie early as I always do, and sat down. After the movie had started, this family came in and sat behind me. The mother then asked me to move because I was blocking her kid's view. I pointed at the near empty theater and said, "You got here after me and there are plenty of free spots." She then went and got a worker to try and make me move. He sided with me and asked them to move. The entitlement of some people. I love watching the trailers at the movies. Normal ads can eat a ball bag, but trailers for upcoming movies of selected genres related to what you are about to see, sign me up for at least 10. God, this was years ago, so IDK. I know at our closest local mall, there used to be, don't know if there still is, a place that would pay you to take surveys. Like, you'd go in, sit down, watch some trailer or issue or what the hell ever. Took maybe 15 to 20 minutes and you'd get paid $20, $30 for your time. One time, I got to take home frozen pizzas to test out, and another time it was Smucker's Uncrustables, but they were ham and cheese, not peanut butter and jelly like they are now. Don't think the ham and cheese tested well, maybe. Did you have to give your thoughts on the trailer, what you would suggest, etc.? Did the film clips look completed? The closest thing to that is I once did a 10-minute questionnaire for a $20 gift certificate about movie-going experiences. I remember watching Megamind in India back in 2010. There was a scene in the movie that cracked a joke. I can't remember which joke was it. The audience were laughing, then after the laugh was fading away, some guy started talking at the top of his lungs saying, "Haha, I get it because Megamind blah 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 and Megamind did that blah blah blah," and his friends started laughing like they owned the theater. In my mind I'm like, yeah, no shit Sherlock, as if the rest of the audience didn't get the joke. This happened during Avengers Endgame. Like, every single big moment was this asshole next to me making some dumb comment. I had to tell him to be quiet a few times. And I know that it's a bit of an odd scene that a bunch of people have mixed feelings about, but he literally screamed with cat claw gesture or cat fight. When all of the women Avengers lined up for that shot in the film, it was the worst experience I've ever had at a theater, and I literally almost cussed him out. I had the misfortune of sitting next to two guys who were not just comic book nerds, which I wouldn't mind, since I have a few friends who could generously be called comic book nerds, but were superior asshole comic book nerds. When people were walking in, they made comments about how, oh, that group is probably just here because it's a popular movie. They probably haven't even seen the first one, and during the movie they kept talking about continuity and comic book stuff. I kid you not, during the scene where Captain America caught Thor's hammer, which, whether you liked it or not, was one of the most hyped moments where everyone in the theater was cheering, one of them leaned over to his friend and loudly whispered, "I knew that was going to happen anyways." They were such a stereotype that it was almost surreal. I like to believe that they were actually a member of an improv or acting group whose assignment was to go to a theater and pretend to be movie-ruining comic book nerds. If so, they nailed it. I never got that. You have a movie with the best fight choreography and CGI you've ever seen in your life, and you're mad about some 30-second scene where all the women were on screen at the same time. It never bothered me for a second, and I think those who are truly bothered by it are just some repressed incels. I mean, as a woman myself, I cringed hard, but it certainly didn't ruin the movie for me. It just seemed really forced in there that like 10 women had to come to rescue Peter after Captain Marvel already cleared the scene. Lol, just my take though. So did I. But that tiny scene isn't for us grown women and men, it's for little girls. Until very recently, women were hugely underrepresented in the superhero movie business, and there weren't many female superheroes little girls could look up to. Now they've got a whole bunch, and that's fucking great. Definitely felt like a pantry moment to me. Hi, cis white dude here, so authority on everything basically, but if it inspired some young girls, women to think I can do that thing I want to do, then I'm all for it. That shot wasn't for me. I get that. Sorry, but Avengers Endgame doesn't have either the best fight choreography anyone has ever seen, and I say this as a person who fucking loves the MCU and Endgame. There are so many examples of movies with vastly superior fight scenes and choreography. Lol. Don't get me wrong, I really do love Endgame, but I could go to my collection and pick out 5 movies without hardly a thought that have superior fight choreography. All 3 John Wicks, Atomic Blonde, both rates for a start. It wasn't the entire movie, but I think about this situation a lot. When Black Swan came out, I was really excited to go see it. A few friends and I got there and the film starts. About 30 minutes in, 2 girls in front of me leave the theater and don't return. I guess they decided it wasn't worth their time, and that's fine. That's their own choice. Then about 15 minutes before the end, the girls come back and start talking to their friend who stayed to finish Black Swan and loudly talk about how they went to do something else because it was better than watching this dumb movie, while the theater is still packed and engrossed in the final sequence. I have never shot sharper-eyed dagger or hushed someone with such librarian-like ferocity before. OMG, I went to see Green Day a few years back. My buddy bought the tickets for us both with his tax return, as long as I drove and paid for parking, which I happily accepted. He wouldn't tell me how much the tickets cost, so I looked them up, and where we were was very pricey. For us, of course, cause we're broke bitches. I looked at the prices of the tickets way up ahead of us, and, honestly, if I was a millionaire I wouldn't pay those prices to see the Beatles open up for the Doors if they all came back from the dead for the show. I was actually disgusted that my buddy paid what he did for our tickets. Halfway through the show, everyone had their phones out recording the show, and Billy Joe says between songs when only his voice could be heard that everyone should put down their phones and actually enjoy the show since they paid for it. Nobody did. They all recorded him with their phones telling them to not do that, and I just couldn't get it. You had that much money to throw away? Must be nice. Hell, I smoke weed and do so on almost every occasion just so I can enjoy it a bit more. And even I don't smoke before concerts because of how much they cost, cause I want to remember the experience at those prices. Lol. Went to Gorillas a few days ago. I think the first full concert at that venue since UK rules allowed for it, and you could see in the standing area people disinterested and taking selfies or recording the whole thing. Even saw one do what was clearly a TikTok 3 times over with the flash lighting up everyone around her. Pissed me off so much. I took a couple photos and a quick 10-second clip for memories, but otherwise my phone was in my pocket enjoying the experience. Didn't spend 10 minutes posting any of it to social media for fake internet points either. That's not being a Karen though. It's a perfectly reasonable reaction when you've paid for something and can't enjoy it because someone else is an idiot. Being a Karen is being unreasonable and telling the manager to give her the premium seats to the next viewing for her and 12 friends that weren't even there, each with a large popcorn, drink and a voucher for future use. They started in Texas, and that's where a lot of them are, but they've expanded to a number of major cities throughout the US. You can see their locations here. I strongly recommend going if you can. Beyond strict enforcement of rules, they do a lot of things well. They serve good food and beer and theater, often with themed menus for bigger movies. They show a lot of independent and art house films you likely wouldn't see at major theaters. They show lots of classic films including stuff like old creature features. They have intros of random material related to the film that they show before start time instead of just ads. and they have lots of special programming like live events and sing-alongs for musicals. I remember I went once to an event where they projected panels from a comic book on screen, and in the pit they had 3 professional voice actors reading the lines, a Foley artist with all their equipment doing sound effects, and a jazz pianist improvising a musical score. Yeah, they kick ass. I'll warn you that the food is a little expensive, but as a treat on a special occasion that's fine. I'm personally not going back to theaters until the pandemic's a bit more under control, but if I still had an ADT near me I'd go as soon as that happened. Haha, I work at one. The shock that rushes over people's face when I tell them to put their away is astonishing. Last week, we were showing Donnie Darko. Guy came in late, sat in one of the first few rows. I'm walking down the stairs and I hear a phone ringing. Then I notice him. I walk up to him to check his tickets, start him with a drink, and he literally answers his phone and starts talking. I told him I couldn't have him on his phone, and he looked at me like I was crazy, and said the movie hasn't started yet, and that's when the very loud and bright message on the TV cut him off and stared that we remove guests on their phone after one warning. I said this is your one warning, then ran along to put his order in. I was once at a movie and the family behind us had brought tablets so their kids could watch videos and play games. The kids also walked around jabbering, just generally being insufferable human beings, and the parents were entitled pieces of crap that felt entitled to behave this way in public and do nothing about their noisy gremlins. A girl behind us at a movie answered her phone and talked like this was completely normal behavior. People started telling her to shut up, hang up her phone, and her boyfriend started yelling and saying he'd fight someone. Thankfully, an usher was nearby and kicked them both out. Morons. I remember one time, Hubs and I went to a movie for Valentine's Day, our anniversary, and I got shushed by a teenage girl, not for talking or doing anything obnoxious, but just for laughing. We'd gone to see How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, like, 1 minute I'm laughing at something adorable Kate Hudson is doing on screen. The next thing I know, I feel somebody pulling on my sleeve. Will you please shut up? You are laughing too loud. I was kind of like, because she was like 13-14. I was also so embarrassed I kind of tried not to laugh the whole rest of the movie because, like, how the fuck can you laugh too loud as a comedy? Seeing a pretty forgettable rom-com once, a guy a few rows back was laughing very sarcastically and loud at every joke, just as everyone else's laughs were subsiding. Couldn't see him when I looked back, but there was no one in the rows between us. I wasn't loving the movie either, but I found it so irritating that he was trying to broadcast that he doesn't find it funny, like he was mocking everyone who was actually enjoying it, including 2 of the people I was there with. I turned and gave kind of a breathless STFU a few times amidst some shushing, but it never stopped. When the lights came up after the movie, wanting to see this asshole and kind of ready for an actual confrontation, I turned only to see a young man with some obvious mental challenges there with what looked to be his parents. His laughter was almost certainly genuine. I went to see The Devil's Rejects, the sequel to House of 1000 Corpses, in the theater. In the beginning of the film, one of the main characters from the first film enters the scene. Lady next to me, who's that? Me? That's Tiny. Lady, who's Tiny? Me? Why are you here if you don't know who Tiny is? Question mark. You gonna come to a sequel to a movie you've never seen and then ask strangers to explain the original plot to you 5 minutes into the film? Hell no. Funny story, my friend and I loved House of 1000 Corpses, and we were the only ones in our entire friend group to want to see the sequel. So we go to the theater and it is just us and this woman who must have been about 80 years old. I bet him $10 she would walk out on the movie. We left during the end credits and she was still there. I was an usher and did this for my job. It's actually much faster than you would expect, not to promote throwing trash, but as a side story, drunk people sometimes pour the rest of the beer into the cup holders. No holes that drain is my old theater, because they know ushers come by and throw them up very quickly while cleaning a row. They are hoping we throw the armrest up and spray the beer everywhere onto the seats behind them. Some of the most trashy shit I have seen in my life, and they're paying to clean out with only paper towels. I was coming out of Black Widow and there were not one, but two half-empty buckets of popcorn. I grabbed both of them and threw them in the trash on my way out. Sure, it might be someone's job to clean the theater after each showing, but we the audience could at least make that guy's job a little easier. As someone who worked at a theater as an usher, I can confirm it sucked. They gave us a small broom and dustpan and we had to make sure the entire theater was spotless before the next show. Kids' movies were the fucking worst. It looked like families would buy over $100 worth of concessions only just to dump all of it on the floor instead of eating it. People that bring kids to adult-themed movies and then allow them to talk the entire time. I went and saw Suicide Squad last weekend and two bozos brought 3 kids. The oldest couldn't have been more than 12. They were shocked by the amount of violence in the opener and I eventually had to tell the father to stop them from talking or there would be a problem. He finally got them under control thankfully, but shut your kids up at movies or don't bring them. Not necessarily. I saw the last James Bond movie the day it came out. It was a weekday early afternoon showing during school term etc., so there were like 12 people there and I got the exact seats I wanted. When we left at the end it was around 4:30 p.m. and there was a line from all the way from the door down the hall to the ticket desk for the next showing. I had a similar experience with the last Marvel movie I saw, too. Oh my god, this comment reminds me of my experience watching A Quiet Place. I paid for a VIP type ticket where you had your own sofa-like seat and everything. The guy beside me was munching on popcorn and slurping drinks really loudly. He was determined to get every last drop of that Pepsi. People talking even if it's ever so quietly. Kids touching my seat from behind with their shoes. Both happen rarely, but if it did it was aggravating. Usually they stop if you turn around with a neutral gaze for 5+ seconds. Now that I think about it, the scrunching of chips and popcorn has never been an issue. Maybe because it's part of the pleasure so my brain just filters it out. Parents encouraging kids to talk during screening. I had the misfortune to endure a mother who go now, Jason, do you understand what that means? Every now and then, and the son would pipe up to answer. Kids will be kids but the parents should tell them the rules. This is not a kindergarten class, even if I was watching Alvin and the Chipmunks. Once there was a family in front of me. This kid, maybe around 8, would not stop talking. The parents didn't care. I asked the child nicely if he could quiet down since the movie was just starting. He just looked back at me. Not even 2 minutes later continues talking. I waited about a minute to see if the parents would intervene. Nope. So I was wearing steel-toed boots and kicked the ever-loving fuck out of his chair, scared the shit out of him. He looked back at me and I stared him down. He didn't make another peep. Parents didn't notice either. So Jeff, I'm sure this answer has been said a dozen times already, but people bringing their kids, especially when the kid isn't the right age for the movie in question, and not trying to control them when they're noisy. When I went to see the second Lord of the Rings film, some idiot brought their 3-year-old, and of course the kid screamed and cried at the scary scenes, but the couple wouldn't take him out to calm him down. So when we almost started shushing them, the father was all, "He's just a baby." So I snapped back, "You shouldn't have brought him in the first place." His wife then forced them to leave and they never came back. There was also the family that walked in near the ending of the second Pirates movie, and the daughter, who must have been 8 or 9, started shouting "This is the middle of the movie" over and over again. When I shushed her, she said, "OUSHHH," I replied with, "Someone ought to spank you, you brat." Again, the parents hightailed it out. In both cases it wouldn't have gone that far if the parents would have just done something instead of standing there like idiots while their child was loud. In this first case they should have hired a babysitter or not come to the movies at all.